this intro and then getting to know your brief history of how you arrived in your current role.
Okay, my current role is I'm Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer for Pan American Insurance Agency. It's an insurance agency in California. We have about 20 offices in California, one in Arizona. Home office is in Pasadena. So that's what I do now.
Okay.
Do you want to know how I got there?
Yeah.
When I graduated college, I graduated Cal Poly San Luis Obispo with a degree in finance. And a few months before I graduated, my dad took me to lunch. He said, I want to talk to you about something, but you have to promise not to call me stupid or anything like that. Just let me get out what I want to say. I was like, okay, Dad. Okay, what do you want to say? And he's like, well, I really think you should consider public accounting as a first step in your career. And I was like, don't be stupid, Dad. You've heard me talk since forever about how I was never going to be an accountant because it's boring. I had taken accounting classes in high school and it just came easy. It was boring. I swore that I would never do it. And he said, no, I really think the experience you get in public accounting, go 2 years, get your CPA, and go do whatever you want after that. I was like, don't be stupid, Dad. Thanks for the suggestion, but you know how I feel about being an accountant. But when on-campus interviews started, 2 of the big 8 at the time were interviewing finance majors. And so I thought, okay, we'll make Dad happy. We'll interview with them. Besides, the big 8 accounting firms had great reputations for good cocktail parties with good food. So I was thinking, okay, we'll go do it. We'll interview with them. We'll make Dad happy. And he can't say I didn't give it a fair shot. So I went through on-campus interviews in my beautiful blue suit that you see me in, and the only one I owned at the time, so every event I was in that blue suit. And it turns out I really liked the people that I met at KPMG, which is a public accounting firm, and the other options for finance majors were like selling investment vehicles or going to work for a bank, and I had worked for a bank in the summer, and I knew what management trainees did, and that didn't sound particularly interesting. And I really, really liked the people I met at KPMG. That's what it really boiled down to, was the people. And in fact, I remember interviewing and they were like, so when are you planning on taking the CPA exam? And I was like, I don't know, when do they And so I started with them in January in a really small start class, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go, I'm going to stay my 2 years, because that's the experience that you need to get your CPA, and then I'll be done. And I went in with that attitude, and I stayed for 10 years.
Wow.
Because it was a lot more than I thought it was, and because I got the opportunity while I was there to do a lot of really cool things. I taught nationally for training classes for the firm, so I traveled around the country and got to teach classes. I think I taught every level of class that you could teach. Wow. I won a couple of National Instructor Excellence Awards for participant reviews of their instructor, and I really liked that. I got to do peer review where you go to other offices and you review other people's work and write reports on that. They sent me to New York for 2 weeks by myself to work in the New York City office to update the practice guide for the insurance practice, the whole guide.
Wow.
I should say I worked in the insurance practice. So Automobile Club of Southern California was one of my clients. Fidelity Financial, which is a title company, was one of my clients.
That's so young.
And then I also had, much to the distress of the practice, that it was a client, Harman International, that makes JBL speakers, Infinity Pile, SoundCloud, they're worldwide. They were my client because I had a weird year end. So I stayed there for 10 years because I really got to do cool things. And there were periods of time where you worked really, really hard in public accounting, but then there was periods where you got a break and you could leave early. And one of the things that I was doing at the time was I was working with high school youth, which has been a passion of mine since I graduated college, and it gave a lot of flexibility because when it wasn't the busy season, I cut out at 3 o'clock and went to the softball game or the volleyball game or whatever, and they were totally fine with that because you put in way more time than that in the busy season. But the last year that I was at KPMG, we had in the insurance practice 4 managers, and I was the most senior one. And right before busy season, 2 of them quit. And I should say the third one was pregnant and due in the middle of busy season. And so the partners pulled us aside, and Melinda Linda and I aside and said, okay, we could hire a couple of other people, it would cost us signing bonuses, it would be expensive, or we could just, you guys could just cover it and work your tail off, and we've already got bonuses approved, and it's, and Belinda and I were like, okay, we can cover it for a busy season. And then she ended up having to leave early because of the stress was creating issues with her pregnancy, so she ended up having to leave early. So it was just me, so my last busy season was just
Hideous.
Over the top.
hideous, over the top. And then right after the busy season was over, one of my clients, that's where I ended up going to work, did an IPO. So that, which is a huge, you have to audit a stub period, and there's all these documents, and you gotta work with lawyers, and it was just an incredible amount of work. And when bonus checks got out, my supposedly huge bonus check, yeah, they changed the rules at the very last minute of what they were going to compensate for bonuses, and they were only going to compensate for selling new business. Well, I was carrying like a $2 million book of revenue, like the largest in the office, and the whole insurance practice. When did I have time to sell new revenue? And that wasn't supposed to be any of my goals. If you looked on my goal sheet, it was all profitability and having my staff be happy and having the clients be happy, which they all were. So I got like a whopping like $1,500 or something. I actually wrote a check and gave it back to the partner and said, if you think this is incentive compensation, you should really just keep it. But I told her at the time, I just want you to know that I know you screwed me. And you can say all you want, that it's not, that you didn't have control of it, that it was the national office and all of that, but you were the one that made me this promise, and you did not live up to it. And she was like, well, but you had a great year, and you got the best raise in the whole Los Angeles office. And I was like, yeah, and if that's what you had promised me, things would be great. But that's not what you promised me, and I know how much money you made off my back this year, and I just want you to know that it's not okay. And I sat in the review that year later, a couple months after that, and cried through the whole review. And she was like, you had a great year. I'm not understanding what you were so upset about. And I had just come to the conclusion, I made bad decisions all year because I was motivated by that stupid bonus check. So I made decisions to be at work when that was the wrong decision to be. And and they did crazy things. They put in a fax line in my house because I told them I'm not sitting in the LA office anymore waiting for a fax at midnight. Because this was before email really kicked in and all of that. So they put in a fax line in my house and bought me a fax. And yeah, granted, it was a lot nicer waiting for the fax, in my pajamas, but still, it was midnight and faxes were coming in. So yeah, so I had kind of come to the conclusion that the job itself wasn't interesting anymore. The challenge of the job became the sheer volume of the work. It wasn't that the work itself was particularly engaging. It wasn't that I was learning anything. And I thought, man, if I have to look at another cash binder, and I'm just going to run screaming from the building. And I am exhausted all the time. I cry all the time because I'm on the edge of my emotions all the time because I'm so tired because of the demands of this job. And so I came to the conclusion, right around the review time in October, that this job was not going to work for me long term. When I looked in my heart of hearts, I really didn't want to be a partner. That was the next step. It really wasn't what I wanted. And more importantly, I realized I couldn't have the kind of life that I wanted to have, and I couldn't be the kind of person that I wanted to be and have this job. It just, it just wasn't going to work. Well, then in December, the client who went public, that had been my second audit client with the firm, so I'd known them for the 10 years that I'd been there, they offered me a job in Pasadena, 10 minutes from my house, more money, less hours. And I was like, I was kind of like, okay. And the only drawback of it was the person who was the CFO at the time, he was kind of Peter principled, and I knew it. And I really had doubts about working for him because I knew I was smarter than he was, and I knew his job better than he did, because one of the reasons why they insisted that he hire someone was he had made a mistake in the roadshow for the IPO and some of the numbers that weren't vetted by anybody else.